Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our, let's say, Misunderstanding Today Recovery Podcast. We're on episode 329. A couple of weeks ago, we started with Thomas Merton's interpretation of the Chuang. One benefit I will mention is the daily devotion. I've taken a lot of the Tao thoughts that we come across and put them into a daily devotional that is free, will always be free. I don't mark it off the email list or anything. You can sign up at buddyc.org. I'm still working on those. I've had a lot going on, so I haven't updated those as much as I would like. My time's starting to free up, so I hope to be able to spend more time on those in the upcoming weeks or months. So some of them aren't perfect. Hopefully you'll enjoy them if you are so inclined. If this speaks to you, that probably will too. You can get those at buddyc.org. Okay, today, page 37 out of the Chuang. If you want to buy a copy of this book, you can also go to buddyc.org. There's a bookstore. There's a link there to the book that we're using. There are several translations. So if you want the one that we're using, that would be it. Okay, a hat salesman and a capable ruler.
A hat salesman and a capable ruler. A man of Sung did businesses in silk ceremonial hats. He traveled with a load of hats to the wild men of the South. The wild men had shaved heads, tattooed bodies. What did they want with silk ceremonial hats? Yao had wisely governed all of China. He had brought the entire world to a state of rest. After that, he went to visit the four perfect ones in the distant mountains of Ku Shish. When he came back, the end.
I've got when he came back across the border.
Oh yeah. Sorry. It didn't say continue. Yep. Across the border into his own city. His lost gaze saw no throne. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Okay, they're comparing the hat salesman to the capable rulers. Let's just talk about the hat salesman first and see what we can glean from that. Okay, we've got a hat salesman. He sold silk ceremonial hats, and he traveled with a lot of hats, which would make sense. He traveled to the South, wanting to sell silk ceremonial hats to wild men with shaved heads and tattooed bodies. What did they want with silk ceremonial hats? Looks like nothing, right? Why would they want them? So he's trying to sell something that people don't want, I think.
Buddy, I wonder if these ceremonial hats were based in a religious practice.
I'm sure they were.
Yeah.
It didn't apply to the wild men of the South.
Yeah.
I was thinking about expectations a little. I was thinking about, this is a good example, I think, of acceptance versus planning. And pride and ego too, because if I think just because something has worked, just because I could sell hats in this area doesn't mean everyone's going to want my hats. So it's that pride, ego kind of thing with that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to be he's got to know what the wild men of the South are like, or maybe he didn't, but I would have researched that before I took all of my hats and traveled to the South to try to sell something that, that they do not need.
Wonder if he was judging them by their appearance.
He should have judged them by their appearance.
Yeah.
He should have done that before he went south, not thinking, "Oh, I could."
Yeah. You
Look
should
at
have
me,
thought
I
if I
can
go
do this.
south, I may not come back.
And I was also thinking about asking people what they need rather than telling people what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting people where they are, trying to learn about them rather than telling them what's best for them.
Being open-minded.
Yeah. Being in a not knowing state.
Not shooting on people.
Yes. Don't shit all over yourself. Hmm.
Yeah, maybe if he'd gone there without all those hats and just asked them, do y'all need any new hats? They might have said, no, we don't wear hats, and that would have saved him a lot of time and trouble.
He could have sold them silk, though, maybe.
Yeah.
They might have need of silk, but he didn't have just silk.
Or they could have told him what kind of hats they actually do want.
Or I was thinking about recovery. Just because something worked one way doesn't mean it's always going to work that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some tools that we use over and over again. I still need to be open-minded in those situations because sometimes the way I've used the tool in the past won't work on the current situation if I'm not open-minded enough to thoroughly evaluate what's going on in my life.
There's a sobriety group that I'm in, and most people in the group count time since their last use, number of days, all that. And there are some people who say, I've tried to do that, and counting days actually stressed me out, and I've found that I do a lot better when I don't count the days. So that's an instance of whatever works for you. I'm not going to push my method on you, especially if you've already tried it and found that it's more harmful than helpful to you.
Now, I'm the opposite, Drew. There's times I would have drank since my last drunk if I wasn't counting days.
Yeah. Yeah, I like watching that number go up.
Yeah. I've got X years. No, I'm not going to. Let me just not drink right now. Maybe if it's this bad tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wasn't counting days, I'd been at the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
One size just does not fit all, does it? No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because really, when I'm dealing with some character defect, I really need to get down to causes and conditions. I need to get down to the fear that's behind that defect. I can't stay on the surface. I can't think everybody is going to want to buy my hat, my ceremonial hat, not even different kinds of hats, just ceremonial hats. They might have bought some other kind of hat from him, but he only had silk ceremonial hat. So if I've prayed for someone who I resented and I got relief, I can't think that every time that's all I need to do. I've talked about before that normally that works. I pray for the person I'm resenting and that just goes away. I know I've told this before. I'll tell it quick again. When my son graduated high school, he didn't go to college, even though he was star student. And he was one of us. He's out running and gunning, didn't want to fool with it. And I thought I was angry with him because he was wasting his opportunity. Could have went to school anywhere, been anything literally that he wanted to be. We looked at Vanderbilt and some other colleges because of what he had some interest in. Incredibly smart. And I felt he was just wasting his life. That's a legitimate reason for me to be angry. But I couldn't get over it. And I talked to my sponsor about it. So instead of just thinking that that one thing was going to work and just kept doing it without fail and just kept on and on, I told him what was going on and we talked about it. And ultimately what we discovered was I was not angry because he was wasting his opportunity. I was really angry because he was embarrassing me. Back to me again. Surprise. So when I shined some light on that and saw what it really was, I really didn't have to do any more work with it. It just went away without even doing any real work after identifying it, which I don't have that happen very often, but that one did. I was like, wow, I had the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Can I see this?
Say that again, buddy.
That I had the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can I see this differently? Is there another way of looking at this?
Buddy, I can relate to the story about your son and putting those expectations. When Jacob went away to school, I started putting a bar up there for him. What about this or what about that? And I had to let go of that because I realized that was my stuff, you know.
Hmm. And maybe we get what we give. So maybe with my seeking to understand and not pressure him, my daughter's 2 years behind. She was coming up. She did great, got her master's. She takes my advice on things, which I don't know would have happened if I hadn't have paved the way with my son because I just try to think what's best for her without and try to keep my ego out of it.
Could it be that your energy is different?
It is. Well, I've told her,
Yeah.
I said, if you hadn't have come along, honey, I would have thought I was a horrible dad because of everything with my son. And then with her, it's been the opposite.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Anything else we can squeeze out of this hat salesman? Any more thoughts on him? Okay, let's go on to the capable ruler. Didn't say wise ruler, just capable. Having the ability, wit, fitness, or quality necessary to do or achieve a specified goal. Having what's necessary, capable. He wisely governed all of China. So China's a big country. He governed the whole thing. This is 2,500 years ago, before the internets. So he wisely governed all of China. So no problem with his governing abilities. As a result, he brought the entire world to a state of rest. After he had accomplished that, he went to visit the four perfect ones in the distant mountains of Kushi. So he was seeking the four perfect ones. Was he thinking that he would maybe gain knowledge to govern better, or we don't know, right? What did he get when he went and saw the four perfect ones? We could say that the ruler went off to seek what he did not have. He was lacking something. He had put the world at rest, but he was not at rest. So what was he going to do about it? He had achieved the ultimate as a ruler, and he still was not at rest. That sound familiar? No matter how hard I tried, before I found recovery, I was not at rest. I had moments, but I was carrying this responsibility that I was not designed to carry. So that all I could do was escape from what I thought was my job, which working the steps, I found my job was different. Not that I had no job, but it was different than what I thought it was. There was a place of rest that I could be in that I found in recovery, no matter what's going on. It's called acceptance. Acceptance again. You think the hat salesman was at rest? Don't know. It sounds like he was pretty ambitious and ego driven, thinking he could sell, what do they say, sell ice to an Eskimo? That's what I always
Eskimo.
heard growing up.
Yeah.
Selling something that people did not need. Not even being open-minded enough to bring silk to sell or different kinds of hats. Oh, this will work. It's obviously a long journey It's the wild men of the South. So he's past civilization. No telling what it cost him to go.
Yeah, I can contrast the two with the capable ruler is he's humble enough to realize he doesn't have all the solutions, he doesn't have all the answers. So he's going to listen to the people who he can learn from rather than the hat salesman who has one answer for everybody, one solution for everybody, his one tool, and believes that's the one thing that everybody needs. So he's bringing the one, his one way to do things to everybody, and the capable ruler is learning from people who he thinks he might be able to learn from.
Could it be that he's not going? What's causing him to go, the ruler, is because he's not at rest. See, him not being at rest caused him, this may be one way of looking at it. Him not being at rest himself caused him to go seek out someone who could give him what he doesn't have. The hat salesman was not at rest. So he needed to sell more hats, he thought. So I'm going to go sell them to the people in the South. Either he didn't know they didn't use silk ceremonial hats, or he didn't. Surely he knew people from the South, because how would he know to go sell them something if he did not know? Maybe he knew their culture was different. Maybe he didn't. But bottom line, he was not at rest either, or he wouldn't have taken on that endeavor. So neither were at rest.
What I was thinking was the guy that had governed all of China, it's obvious he had everything. And he was probably looking around and realizing that he had everything, but he was still carrying around that God-sized hole.
He had everything but what he needed.
But what he needed.
But you know what? In a way, maybe the hat salesman did too.
And didn't realize it.
Okay, so the ruler, he went and visited the four perfect ones, distant mountains. So he traveled a long way, a lot of effort to get there. The hat salesman traveled a long way, a lot of effort for him to get there. Doesn't say whether the ruler found anything or not. It just says he went to visit them. He was gone for so long. Maybe there was some ego there, him thinking whoever he put in charge while he was gone, that it would all work perfectly because he was such a good ruler. Maybe there was some ego there too.
Mm-hmm.
Just like maybe ego with a hat salesman. So when he returns, he came across the border into his own city. So he got back to his own city. He lost gaze. His lost gaze saw no throne. Lost meaning that he was shocked, disenfranchised. Although he saw that there's no throne. In other words, he was no longer the ruler. What happened? So the country he put together was not the same when he got back, in other words. So the rest that he had brought to the world was may have not been there because there was no throne at all. So maybe no one was in charge. I don't know. But it wasn't the way he thought it should be, very least.
Sounds like to me that maybe when he got back, he realized that all these material things aren't capable of fixing that inside work. Or it says he lost his gaze and then saw no throne. Maybe he realized he was just like everybody else.
Could be that there was still a throne there.
Yeah.
Realized it wasn't what it was made out to be. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
I can also see a comparison. The capable ruler realizes he's been capable. He's been doing his job fine. So it reminds me of like a functioning alcoholic. I'm I'm still employed. I'm not losing my job. I'm capable. And then just waking up one day and realizing just because I'm doing my job okay, that's not enough. That's not fulfilling me. I'm missing something on the inside.
Any other comparisons you guys can make between the two? Lesson number 5 in A Course in Miracles. I am never upset for the reason I think. I am not angry at blank for the reason I think. I am not afraid of blank for the reason I think. I am not worried about blank for the reason I think. I am not depressed about blank for the reason I think. Neither the hat salesman or the capable ruler were not at rest for the reason they thought. The solution to the hat salesman was to go sell to people that either he was egotistical to think he could sell anyway, or just hurriedly went to do it without doing his research. Either way, he was looking for something else, either probably more sales, whatever. That's the way I'm looking at him. And here we have the ruler who did the same thing. He said, I'm not at rest. There's something I don't have. I need to go find it. You wouldn't go seek out the perfect ones in a distant land unless you thought you were lacking in some way. He was able to give rest to others, or brought the entire world to a state of rest. So when he got back, maybe he realized it in that regard. Or your other translation, what do they say, Brian? You've got another translation of this, don't you?
I don't think it's the same book because it's Chansa, the Tao of Perfect Happiness. And see,
When you get those Tao of something, it's normally not what you think it is.
yeah, see, verse 1 is perfect happiness.
Mhm.
So I haven't even opened it and looked into it yet.
Okay, never mind.
Number 2 is the universe. It sounds like it has all the answers.
Wow, maybe we just need to look at it.
It's got commentary from somebody that's got it figured out.
We're going to look through my old Chuang by Guy Fu Fang and Jane English and see if I can find some of the stories are in here, but they're, oh, here we go. On page 15, let me read their translation of this story. A man from the state of Sung selling ceremonial caps made a trip to the state of Yu. But you people, having short hair and tattooed bodies, had no use for them. Yao brought order to the people of the world and ruled wisely over the lands bounded by the 4 seas. But returning south of the Fane River after his visit to the 4 sages on Mount Q, he lost his interest in the empire. He could have found what he was looking for, according to that translation.
Mm-hmm.
So his lost gaze was a positive thing, if we want to go with this line of thinking.
Lost his ambition.
The hat salesman, in this regard, would be the negative, with the capable ruler actually finding his rest.
That's what I got out of it, was that
You didn't have that before we read this, Drew. I guarantee you. No, I'm just.
Huh?
You had that before we read this?
I did. It was saying to me that the hat salesman was bringing his one method to everybody, and that the capable ruler was aware enough to know that he didn't have everything, so he went to go seek solutions from the people he realized were wise and had what he wanted: inner peace, or calmness, serenity, being one with the Tao. So yeah, that's how I took the story, is be more like the capable ruler who's humble enough to know that there are people who have solutions he hasn't thought about, has a way of living he might like to try adopting, rather than forcing his way of living on everybody else.
You just delete the whole podcast and just put this in the front and we'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess it took all of that to get here, though. I always think the worst anyway. I always do. So his lost gaze was positive. He ended up finding what he was looking for, unlike the hat salesman. So what's our lesson from this, guys? Do we have a lesson? Let's just ask Drew, what's the lesson from this?
Yeah.
Oh, makes me think about meetings. Who benefits more from the meetings? Is it the person who comes into a meeting and just tells everybody their one way to do everything? Or is it the one who comes in and sits and listens and learns from people who've been there, longer than he has?
Also, the ruler was very successful. Could he have been more successful? It doesn't sound like. He realized that he needed to look elsewhere for the solution. Maybe that's one way to approach this. That his seeking was a positive thing rather than a negative. Okay.
Yeah, the whole external rewards aren't going to get you what you're really looking for.
The hat salesman definitely was not open-minded, was very stuck, it seems, in his ways, not open to anything outside of what he currently thought was the right way for him to sell or what to sell. But yet, the ruler who ruled all of China and gave the entire world a state of rest, brought the entire world to a state of rest, said, I don't have this figured out. So I'm going to seek someone who might have what I'm looking for. That's humility. As a result, when he got back, he had lost interest in ruling. So it changed him. He found his rest, right?
Buddy, to me, that speaks to the anonymity piece in a meeting. You don't know who you're sitting next to. It may be somebody that has a MD or PhD, or it may be somebody that doesn't have any form of education, but they've all got the same level of powerlessness. As I used to say, we all put our pants on the same way every morning. Back in my wild and woolly days, I had a little dispute with an attorney, and I told him that he put his pants on just like me every morning. He didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of truth to it, though.
Same line of thought there, Brian, with the anonymity. We don't know what our small acts of service will lead to. If we're open-minded enough to be of service in situations, just following your gut with those things, as long as I've learned to just follow that intuitiveness, as long as it doesn't harm someone else or harm me, what will it hurt?
That's it.
I know I've told the story, I think I have on here, probably, I'm sure I have over the years, how I went and visited a guy in the hospital that was a member of my group that nobody liked. Just a old asshole. One of those old rigid, crusty old AA guys. And I rode my motorcycle over to visit him. It was a 30-minute ride and cloudy and 40 some odd degrees. So it wasn't a fun day to ride. I rode all the time then, unless it was ice. And so I rode over to see him in the hospital. I just felt like I needed to. I didn't realize he had started Transitions Daily 12 years before, 14 years before. And he had pushed the button to send that every night, all that time. And he asked me if I would help him with it. And one thing led to another. And I ended up inheriting that service. Now we have a lot of people involved with it. There's all kinds of things that have happened. And there's 20,000 plus people now that get transitions, growing 3 to 5 people a day transitionsdaily.org if you want to take a look. But there's people now that are helping with all those things. It's a podcast, it's a daily, I mean, it's all these things that it wasn't. Through all those connections, I met a guy that had an online recovery group. I was in the group and we started this podcast from the group. So what I'm saying is all of, including the podcast, all of this started from me going and visiting a guy in the hospital I didn't even like on a cloudy 45 degree day. So what I'm saying is you never know what your little acts of service could turn into. You just never know. I didn't go do that thinking all of this would come from that. I had no, I was just going to, well, I guess I'll go visit him. So I just went and did it, not wanting to, but really felt deeply that I needed to. So don't underestimate those small acts, but you've got to be a little open-minded to do that.
Yeah. But the key is you said you didn't want to, but you felt like you knew you needed to.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was at rest enough to listen to that and not be, I need to work today. I need to go, I need to work on my business. I don't need to take off and go see this guy.
Reminds me of the Bible verse, whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do unto me.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you guys, I had my concerns when we started. I was like, okay, let's see what comes out of this. Well, we read it and I was like, oh shit, there's nothing here. And Drew had it figured out the whole time. And
Yeah.
I still don't believe him. I'm going to put you on the spot next time, Drew.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
If there's nothing else, y'all have a great week and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.